The state of UK politics has become an arena where promises are often empty, alliances fragile, and the truth, if it ever surfaces, comes far too late. A quick glance at the political landscape reveals a shocking lack of accountability, ideological coherence, and genuine vision. Instead, we see a desperate scramble for relevance among leaders who would rather pander to power than tackle the real issues facing the nation. The latest developments in UK politics: Keir Starmer's disorienting diplomacy on Ukraine, Richard Tye's scandalous CV revisionism, and Labour's catastrophic decline in Scotland, serve as glaring reminders that British political leaders are too busy covering their tracks to deliver anything of substance. Take, for instance, Keir Starmer's ill-timed appeal to the United States to step up in the Ukraine conflict. Starmer's frantic efforts to bring American military muscle into Europe's backyard may seem like a reasonable strategy at first glance. Yet the reality is far more complicated. Starmer, ostensibly a leader of a sovereign nation, has placed Europe's security on the back burner in favor of outsourcing crucial military responsibilities to the US. While it's true that Europe needs more robust defense capabilities, to wait for the Americans to swoop in is not just embarrassing, it is downright irresponsible. There's an argument to be made that Europe must finally grow up, shoulder its own defense burden, and stop relying on the US to be the world's policeman. But Starmer seems to think that getting America involved will save the day, even though Europe cannot even agree on whether or not to provide adequate support for Ukraine, as evidenced by Germany's reluctance and France's half-hearted response. Europe's weak and divided stance only fuels the very instability Starmer claims to want to resolve. Moreover, Starmer's diplomatic maneuvers, trying to smooth things over with Donald Trump and the US, reveal an underlying weakness in British leadership. Trump, of all people, is the figure Starmer seeks to placate to secure a guarantee for Ukraine's future. This is the same Trump who has openly questioned the value of NATO and who may, in the near future, decide that Europe's defense matters are no longer a priority for the US. Yet, Starmer is still pushing the idea that we can continue to rely on the whims of a foreign power while our own European leaders fail to reach a consensus on security. What happened to the idea of an independent Britain forging its own path? Under Starmer, it seems that the UK is content to tag along in America's wake, forfeiting any sense of national autonomy. Then there's Richard Tye, the deputy leader of Reform UK, whose recent CV scandal underscores just how little integrity exists among the political elite. Tye's boasts about tripling CLS Holdings' share price have been thoroughly debunked, and yet, he continues to hurl accusations at others without batting an eyelash. The hypocrisy is staggering. After calling out others for exaggerations, Tye himself is caught red-handed, conveniently forgetting to mention the full extent of his company's performance. This is the same man who has built his political platform on holding others to account, yet fails to meet the same standard of transparency. If this is the caliber of leadership that Reform UK offers, then they are no better than the tired, dishonest parties they seek to replace. Labour's situation is equally bleak. Scotland, once a Labour stronghold, is slipping further from their grasp with each passing day. The polling data is a devastating blow to Labour's chances in the next election, as they are poised to lose 83.7% of their seats in Scotland. This is not a minor setback, this is a collapse of historic proportions. The party's shift towards centrism may have earned them some favour in England, but in Scotland, it is nothing more than a betrayal of working-class voters who feel abandoned by a party that no longer represents their needs. Labour's failure to maintain its ideological roots is manifesting in real-world consequences. The rise of the SNP and Reform UK, both of which are gaining traction among voters disillusioned with the old guard. Labour has lost its voice in Scotland, and Starmer's attempts to revive it are too little, too late. The situation is equally dire for the Conservative Party, which has failed to make inroads in Scotland and is now on the brink of a humiliating defeat. Their dismal performance has driven many of their traditional voters toward Reform UK, positioning them as a credible anti-establishment force. If the Tories do not act swiftly, their grip on Scotland will slip entirely, leaving them with little more than a bitter political memory. This is where the real political awakening is happening. Voters are abandoning the tired establishment parties in favour of alternatives like Reform UK. They want fresh ideas and a break from the same old narratives of Westminster politics, which have been running in cycles for far too long. The political elites, like Starmer and Tye, cannot hide behind hollow promises and empty slogans any longer. The electorate has grown weary of these tired faces, and the signs of political realignment are already visible. Whether it's the disastrous Ukraine diplomacy, the dishonest CVS, or the electoral collapse in Scotland, it's clear that the current political order is crumbling under the weight of its own failures. For the UK to have any chance at a meaningful future, it needs leaders who can rise above the murky politics of self-preservation. It's time for an overhaul, a recalibration of what it means to lead this country. The electorate is calling for change, and if the establishment parties continue to ignore the demand for accountability and integrity, they will only hasten their own demise. The current political climate cannot be ignored, and if the parties fail to take action, they will pay the price at the ballot box. The future of the UK requires bold leadership, not the weak, compromised figures who currently populate its political stage. The time for change is now.